In general, I'm a very good ambassador for games and learning. Like that's a big part of who I am, and that I think comes across quite easily.
Etan Ilfeld is an investor. He's a physicist. He's a filmmaker. He owns a publishing company. He owns a bookstore, one of the oldest bookstores in London. He is a chess master. He owns and runs the Mind Sports Olympiad. Last summer, he competed in the World Championships of Backgammon after only really learning the game at a deep level for a year or two. And he beat the champion from the year before. He is passionate about gaming and a lot of things, and really embodies what we think the spirit of this show is. We loved our conversation with him. It was one of our first conversations, and I hope you do too.
This was the #1 best-selling book right after the Queen died in the whole UK.
So Nostradamus. And so you said that this is just like the other Nostradamus books, but that this is the only one that predicted the Queen would die last year.
Pretty much.
What's your actual, would you do believe in this stuff?
I don't know is the answer. We're not filming yet, right?
Yeah, we're filming. So do you believe that Nostradamus is real? Like that his prophecies were real and that he had something going?
You know, I studied physics. So I come from like an ultra, like rational, logical kind of background, but I've also been exposed to, the more esoteric. My mom's an astrologer. And so I try and somehow balance the two. I keep an open mind, basically. I don't know.
I love your mom, by the way. She's the best.
Thanks. I love her too. She is the best. She's amazing. And it's weird. I mean, human beings, we're designed to look for patterns, and sometimes perhaps we see things that aren't always there. But then again, sometimes weird things do happen. So I don't know, our world is very complicated, and also science doesn't understand everything. And going back to astrology, I mean, there's no doubt that, for example, the moon has a big effect on like the tide. I mean, that's physics, that's gravity, right? And, in a lot of like ancient cultures, there's always been a lot of like mythology around full moons, like werewolves, or having, Dionysian kind of like, bacchanalian kind of like parties during full moons. I mean, but this idea that perhaps the moon might actually affect our mood, it's not that crazy. I mean, I think there have been studies about menstrual cycles, becoming aligned with the moon. And so, our bodies are mostly water. They could be affected and correlated with, the things that are happening in the heavens above. So why not go a step further? Perhaps perhaps it starts to get quite weird when you try and go into like a lot of planets and look for all these different patterns. But, I don't know enough basically to give a strong answer on these things, but I do try and keep an open mind.
Yeah, and you have fun with it too.
It's a
blast. Yeah, what's your sign?
I'm a Libra.
What does that mean?
And Libras supposedly are very indecisive, which is true. They're always looking at both sides, both point of views, and trying to figure things out. They're very analytical.
That checks out. You like to explore both.
Yeah.
In my experience with you, which is extensive, you really do explore both sides of each argument to the fullest.
Well, I think that's also part of my Jewish background, right? I think arguing can be a useful thing and trying to figure things out. And
you can't build and you can't create things unless you truly know how to argue.
I believe that, absolutely. So, yes.
And Jews, I think, are really great arguers, which some other groups of people find that to be obnoxious. That's my lifeblood. I love getting into it.
I
know you do. We get into it all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, that's a fun thing. It's not about ego. It's about enjoying the discourse and
getting to the truth or getting closer to the truth.
Exactly. Right? I mean, if you study the Talmud, often what they do is they literally just argue about nuances, trying to interpret and understand the world. And, it was quite interesting, by the way. Recently, we'll get into this, but I studied a lot of backgammon, and the way you do that in coaching is, we'd play a game or look at positions with. And we start to argue about why is this move better than this move and why. And then what's cool, unlike, I guess, if you're into some sort of mystical exploration, you don't always have a definitive answer. In backgammon, you can have the AI come in and then tell you what's the right move. But it's fun to argue before and try and figure out and reason and then see, how does your logic stand up to...
Right. Should I have used the doubling cube? Should I have accepted the quadruple, whatever the hell else? And also the poker moves that are kind of ingrained between those things,
yes.
Right?
I love to learn. You asked me about my zodiac sign earlier. And they do associate Libra with Venus, which is also interested in the arts. Whenever I go to a city, one of the first things I want to do is go to its museums. I'm all about trying to consume culture, because I believe that in order to create, you need to consume. So the more I learn, the more I can contribute to the world. So that's kind of, I guess that's kind of part of who I am and how I operate. And yeah, I'm always looking for like cool new things to learn, new challenges. And
the best is being around friends at Magic Show. Have you been to Magic Castle in LA?
Of course.
And
absolutely.
just the way they freak out, like there's some people, I love that kind of stuff.
By the way, I should mention, there's a magician that performs at the Magic Castle called Art Benjamin. I read his book a few years ago. It's called, I think, The Secrets of Mental Math or something like that. Mathematical Magic.
Oh, cool. Mathemagics.
Mathemagics, yeah. And he's amazing. I mean, he can do crazy things like...
you remember those old video cassettes of Mathemagics? My dad used to buy those and show them to us when we were kids.
That's so cool.
Yeah. They were really goofy, but like kind of cool.
I love it. Well, here, I'll show you a cool trick. This one we'll use Mathemagic. All right, so this one actually I can do it with cards, but just for the hell of it, it's a lot quicker. I'll do it. I'll do a shortened version and a bridged version. So give me a birthday, any day, any date that you want. I don't know. Choose a date. It could be. How about your brother Ethan's birthday? What is it?
Okay, September 10th, 1991.
Okay, so let me try. Let's see.
Is the eye squinching thing part of the performance?
Yes.
Or are you just, have you already done the math and you're already there and this is part of
September 10, you said?
Yes. Are you getting the eye squinching?
Okay, so it's a Tuesday.
I don't know. Were you born on a Tuesday?
Let's check it out. Were you born on Tuesday?
Oh yeah, he was born on a Tuesday.
There you
How
go.
did you know that?
There you go. That's Mathemagic for you, baby. I can incorporate that into a card trick.
That's a tough trick because most people I don't think know the day they're born, do they?
No, but Siri is always around. You know?
Yeah, I did look it up.
Art Benjamin, who has this great book, I met him at a Magic convention earlier this year, and he's a world-class backgammon player. I read this book that teaches you how to do weird shit, including calculate the day of the week in your head, which isn't that hard, by the way. It just takes practice. I think anyone can do it, right? Like a Rubik's Cube, kind of. And then the beauty of it is that, life is so rich. Like, here's this guy who's a professor of mathematics. That's what he does, actually. And then he's also a magician on the side and a professional backgammon player as well. And it just goes to show, like, one field can lead to something completely different. There always will be a bridge between very different things. And I find making those connections in life really interesting and looking for them. And, yeah, so that's a big part of what I'm into, basically.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons I think that I was attracted to you as a friend, right? That I wanted to be around you is because it's always an exciting, often positively nerdy kind of exploration
very nerdy,
with you.
Definitely
but
very nerdy.
in the best way. I know you knew how to play backgammon before, but you just came back this morning or last night.
Last night. Yeah.
From Monaco, from the Backgammon World Championships, which means you're now taking this a little more seriously when you start to actually learn proper backgammon.
Yeah, so I hung out with Art Benjamin at the end of January and at this Magic convention, and we played a bit of backgammon, and he told me that if I wanted to get serious, I should try training with a coach, and he introduced me to a coach.
But so you met Art Benjamin, and you were like, this guy's convincing me to get serious about backgammon.
Well, I love games. I host a big games festival.
Right, no,
we
of course.
haven't talked about that yet, but backgammon is one of the games. I was never a strong backgammon player before, but I've played chess competitively. I'm a chess master, and I've played lots of games. I've been playing games since I was a
you've always played backgammon. What happened?
No, I've never played backgammon seriously.
Yeah, but I played you in backgammon.
I knew how to play it. Yes.
Okay.
Well, to be fair,
you beat me. In backgammon.
Yeah, but when we played, I think that was in October, and when I was visiting Austin, and at the time I was starting to get interested in backgammon a bit. At the time,
didn't we play years ago? I'm sure we played years ago because I played a lot of random games with you.
Yes, we played a lot of games, but I don't think it was backgammon before.
Okay, well, okay, fair enough. So now you're getting into it. You're getting passionate about it. Do you actually think to yourself, I can go compete at the highest level in 6 months from now? Is that your goal?
That was my goal.
So you made that goal, and you thought to yourself, I'm going to do this.
Yeah. So in January, I was like, well, let's see, how quickly can someone become, very competitive at something.
Yeah, like just some random guy, Etan.
Well, first of all, yes, I have transferable skills for sure, and knowing how to manage.
Like, how long would it take me? 10 years? What do you think?
I don't think so. You're a bright guy. I think. I think learning. I'm very interested in the art of learning, and I think this 10,000 hour notion, I think, is a bit
outdated.
It's outdated. Yeah, I think you can learn. You can become an expert at something in 500 hours. I believe.
Wow. Well, you have to be intensely focused, and
exactly, and you need to have constant feedback. So, right, it's like, you keep doing the same thing and not improve.
So
right?
how'd you train?
So I trained with a coach alongside an AI, and every time we would play, or he would give me different concepts to learn, we would also see what the AI would say, and I would practice with an AI all the time. So I was getting constant feedback from an AI basically, and sometimes I didn't always understand what the AI was saying. So you need a coach sometimes to kind of give you a narrative, but usually you can figure out what the AI wants when it's pointing towards certain moves. And I think, by the way, in the future, AIs are going to be better at teaching us. I think we're not quite there yet. Often they'll just tell us what the best thing is, but they don't always know how to explain it. But in backgammon, I kept getting constant feedback, and that's what I call disciplined kind of practice. Basically,
does the AI know how to do the betting cubes and stuff?
Of course.
So that it's just it's every single stage of the game.
Every stage, and it knows based on the match score also how to adjust for the doubling cube and everything. It's perfect.
So who would you end up beating this year at the World Championships in Monaco?
I have to say I got a little bit lucky. Let's just be clear on that. But I did beat the defending world champion in the first round, which is, that was very exciting and unexpected. And then I ended up winning, several more rounds.
Was he annoyed?
He was annoyed, but not at me. He was very nice. He was annoyed at himself.
Because he made mistakes.
He made some mistakes, yeah. He still played well, but he didn't play as well as he could have played.
And did you notice the mistakes as they were happening?
I think so.
Yeah.
I took a bit more risk than perhaps I needed to, because I realized I had nothing to lose in this match, and I guess I got rewarded for it as well.
Wow. So comparisons between chess and backgammon, and I know you know so many other games, but I'm just curious because a lot of chess is subconscious at this point for you because you've been playing it for so long. You see patterns more than other people would on the chessboard. After 6 months of backgammon, are you starting to see similar sorts of patterns form right away? Like, can you actually see the way games are going to generally go?
A little bit. I mean, the thing about backgammon is there's a lot of volatility, a lot of uncertainty. So things can fluctuate quickly. But yeah, certainly I can see a lot more patterns. By the way, interesting thing about chess players and chess masters, there was a study done a few years ago where they gave chess positions to chess masters and to amateurs, and they tried to see who could remember the position quicker. And obviously the chess masters were usually a lot faster. But if you gave them a random position that didn't make sense, like kings touching each other, for example, without any logical pawn formation, the amateurs were just as good as the experts.
Wow.
So chess players don't have better memories, but they have, in their brains, they've created these abilities to kind of to chunk information and to recognize certain patterns, right? And that's what makes them better at, I guess, normal positions, basically.
You also have the memory games at your competition. And so you know a lot about them. Wasn't the Memory Palace author one of the people that competed in your competition? Moonwalking
with Einstein by Joshua Foer. Amazing book. Highly recommended. He didn't compete in our event. In fact, I think the best player in the world, Andrea Muzzi, he competed in one, and he's amazing. He can memorize a deck of cards in 20 seconds.
So you're saying that the chess players mastered that sort of ability to memorize,
but in a different way, So it's very different. I mean, memory palaces and
how do you do it? So you use memory palaces and mnemonics now. What is the chess memory like?
I love Moonwalking with Einstein, and after reading that book, I did learn how to memorize a deck of cards. Not very quickly. It would take me about 5 minutes. That's pretty slow, but anyone can learn how to do it. And it's a cool skill to learn, actually, to memorize 52 cards. And again, I believe that anyone, the average man in the street, no problem. They just need to, learn the technique and practice, and it's doable. But that's a very, very different skill, I would say, from chess. Chess, you use memory to a large extent, but it's also a lot about strategy and tactics. So knowing how to recognize certain formations that have advantages or disadvantages, and then tactics in the short term, knowing how to calculate, being able to calculate, just calculating the day of the week. That's a type of muscle you need to exercise. And the better you are at calculating, the stronger a tactical player you'll be, and you'll just you'll win material. That's very important.
That makes total sense. You're a multinational guy. We're sitting in your house in London right now. Where would you say you spent the bulk of your childhood? What identity was the strongest for you?
And my identity is quite fluid, as you say. On the one hand, most of my childhood was in Israel, even though I was born in the States. But then I spent most of my 20s in the States, in California. And then I came to London in my late 20s. And I spent about a third of my life in the UK, another third in Israel, another third in the US.
So when did you link into the gaming world?
Okay, so my dad got me into chess when I was 4.
And you remember this?
Yeah, I remember seeing him playing. At the time, they had these really simple chess computers where there was literally a board with LEDs, and you would touch it, and then the LED would tell you what the computer's move is. It would light up from one square to another. and I would see him play, and I wanted to play. So I learned how to play. By the time I was 6, I could beat, most of his friends. And then I started competing when I think I was around 8 or so.
Was that the only game you were playing between 4 and 8?
No. We liked games. We would play other games as well.
So as a family, and what about your friends? Were they into this at all?
I had friends that were into chess, which was quite cool. And some very good chess playing friends to this day that go back,
since
over
childhood.
30 years. Yeah. So
you guys are still in touch?
Yeah.
Would you guys do like reunions? Like how do you guys?
Well, one of my best friends, actually, Ilya Amazing, who I met playing chess when we were like 11 in Israel. He's still,
was he at your wedding?
He was at my wedding. He was one of my best men. He's, we still, even though he's in the States, we do a call every month. We're still, just as close as ever. So yeah, chess has brought me some good people for sure.
What really interests you about games? What is it that you think consciously, and then maybe have you thought about the subconscious connection you have to this competition than you do?
Okay, so games. Why do I play games? There are a lot of different art forms. Like stories are all about narrative, and paintings about the visual. But games, they're an art form of agency. They let people basically act and make decisions and pretend that the stakes are meaningful, even though they aren't really, in a sense. And there's something I think really profound about that. We can take on different personas. We can be mean sometimes in games, right? Even to our friends, even though we may love them, we do, right? But within that little magic circle, anything goes to some extent, and it allows us to express different parts of ourselves, and agency and play through games is really vital to the human condition. Obviously, some people play more games than others, and obviously I go to one extreme. But I think that games are good for most people. I would say they're healthy. They're not just good for the mind as a form of exercise, but I think for our soul, they're a really, really important place. They let us transgress in ways you're not supposed to, in the normal social order. I think they're really magical, and I love games. I love learning new games, and I love learning how to learn and trying to master new games as well. So for me, games are a way of life.
That was really beautiful. It's really beautiful. You said the stakes weren't high in games for you. For you, you're a purist. You don't really like to gamble. It's not really something you bring into the game. You mentioned that not every backgammon player, but that a lot of the backgammon players at this Monaco event you were just at, to your surprise, were betting all over the place. Can you explain that?
Huge gamblers. Absolutely. I mean, look, backgammon is a game of chance. There's dice. That's a good breeding ground for gambling, like poker. And a lot of people love to do that. For me, it's all about learning how to play and playing well, and also not just the result, which is very important, but also later on having, our games are transcribed, and then an AI goes over them and tells you like how you played, and just seeing that you played well, learning and improving. I enjoy that. For me, it's very important to try and leave like a positive impact in the world in almost everything I do. And I don't really enjoy gambling. I don't enjoy taking money from people.
Because you're so good at gaming, you're never going to lose money, Etan?
No, and I can lose as well. I don't enjoy losing either, obviously. But I don't, I don't see, there's no, it's kind of net zero, whereas, when you're playing, you're both expressing things, you're learning new things. That's a net positive. But when you bring money into it, I'm not saying that's bad, and that's okay. For some people, that's, they really enjoy it. And I think, all things in moderation, I guess, right? Because obviously some people can become, gambling like addicts and take it too far. But I mean, I think, as long as it's within a healthy, I guess, proportion, that's okay. But I don't enjoy that.
Yeah, I've been to your Mind Sports Olympiad. It was an amazing event, and the people that participate in that event they approach games the way you do, and they really, really love it for the sake of the games. And they love winning, but it's not about any sort of gambling situation, right? What does a winner get? What is the?
Oh yeah, 500 pounds for the overall. We've got a prize for the person who has the best result from 5 different games, and you can pick your top games.
But there's amazing performers that focus on this and spend years of their lives, dedicated to this thing. And it's really, really beautiful. We actually can explain what MSO is.
So the Mind Sports Olympiad is a unique tournament that takes place over a week. And every day we've got lots of different games, different tournaments, and you can play in each event. You could play in the memory event. You play in one of our chess events, a lot of chess events, or our backgammon events, or Catan, Settlers of Catan. We've got
that was a fun one to watch.
Yeah, we've got that's one of our signature events. You can come and win a medal in any of these events, and that's cool. But there's a lot of meta events. So we try and encourage people to learn new games. So we actually give awards for the player who has the best result in 5 different games. And we have there's certain categories, and you can use only one chess score, for example, and one poker score, let's say. But the idea is to show real breadth, and by mastering different games, you can become the Pentamind world champion. Pentas in 5, and
you made a documentary about the MSO
with you.
Yeah. Well, where can people check it out right now?
It's on YouTube. There's actually several channels have it on YouTube. But yeah, just look up Pentamind, Penta as in 5, and then mind as in brain.
That was so fun, man. That was such a good time.
It's a great documentary. You did a great job as well. So very proud of it.
You're an amazing investor. You're an amazing business person, but you also have this really big dedication to culture, and you like buying and preserving things that you think should be preserved. Culturally speaking. And
sure.
we'll go into other things you've done. MSO is one of the things that kind of fits this bucket. So what's that journey been like?
So this will be the 14th year. And, and every time I do it, it's like a shitload of like energy and effort.
Politics.
And there's always politics as well. Yeah.
And everyone has their own opinion about how it should be run.
That's right. Yeah.
And people aren't really empathetic about how difficult it is to put together such a big competition.
We get a lot of support as well. There always will be some critics, but I think people are.
Who in particular we're going to throw under the bus right now? Come on.
We're not throwing anyone under the bus. But look, it's a lot of work. And, in the year that I volunteered to run it, before I ended up buying the tournament a few years later, but the year that I ran it for the first time was 2010. Basically, that same year, I also bought Watkins Bookshop, which was, it's London's oldest mind, body, and spirit bookshop, and it goes back to 1893. So those were 2 years where I took on these institutions, basically, and one of them, has been around now for for way over a century, and I'm committed to preserving it during my lifetime, at least. So I see myself as a custodian of that unique institution. The second of which is not as old, but I think also extremely important. I also want to ensure that it thrives, and going back to games, it's very close to my heart. Everything it represents is really very close to who I am. So
it's a shame that it overlaps. It happens at the same time every year as Burning Man.
It's true.
So you haven't gotten to get to Burning Man in a while.
Right. Well, I have gone to Burning Man actually twice since I started running MSO, but I went for like the second half, basically, like straight from MSO. But yes, it's tough. And I know there have been talks of maybe changing the dates and all that. I mean, tradition's always a hard thing to shake up. Who knows? Anything's possible.
You preserve MSO. You're preserving Watkins Bookstore, which, by the way, you didn't mention isn't it in the alley or the street that J.K. Rowling based Diagon Alley on?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And that's the only really like wizarding, witchy kind of store in the alley. So.
For sure. Watkins was a big inspiration for Diagon Alley and Harry Potter, no doubt. So a lot of really interesting people do come to the shop. It's a magnet for cool cats, I'd say. So
from Watkins, is that where you got into publishing?
Yes, absolutely. So I saved Watkins out of bankruptcy in 2010, and I've always loved books, but I basically became really interested in the idea of publishing books for the first time. And that's when I started my own media company that publishes books. We publish a lot of books every year now. I think it's about 150 books.
And just a few years ago, it wasn't profitable last time I checked. That's
true.
And now it's doing really well.
Yeah.
So what was that journey like?
And it's doing well, even though we're still also, part of it's also funding an AI startup that's within the company.
No way.
So yeah, which is also quite cool. We can talk about that as well.
I had no idea.
But that's Play Strategy.
Okay.
Which is part of Watkins Media. But yeah, I think wow. I mean, it took a while to like put new systems in place and learn. I think one of the most important thing that we did was we started giving every month we grade the titles that we published a year beforehand, and we try and learn what works and what doesn't work, and basically go back and figure out what did we do wrong, And so we have a 6-month and an annual review every month, looking at exactly the books that came out 6 months ago and 1 year ago. And we're constantly trying to learn and improve our systems because, everybody makes mistakes and that's fine. But I think just like in learning how to master a game, you need good feedback to be able to improve, basically. And I think as an organization, we've really improved over the years and we're quite good at what we do. So I think that was a big thing. I've also got great people working with me. And, I think that's really,
your team seems really awesome based on what I understand. So your trajectory from United States, Israel, at what point did you start to trend towards this Renaissance man sort of existence where you're doing
you're way too kind.
All right, fine. Multifaceted dork.
But I've always been a multifaceted dork. I think all dorks are actually. I think you can't be. You
can be like a dork about like a
one
myopic
thing,
thing.
I guess.
Yeah.
But usually that will start to lead to other things. It's inevitable.
Hopefully.
Yes.
That's for a better life. But no, but you're different. You see. I mean, you went to Stanford. You studied physics,
math and physics. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So that's very different than the mind body spirit store. Although to your point earlier, there might be some connections and overlap, and
absolutely
there's things there you can connect. When along the way, was it Stanford? Was it before Stanford? When did you really start to realize that you had such an incredible diverse set of interests?
Well, I think first of all, I think again, flattery will get you everywhere. Let's be clear. But I think most of us are interested in kind of exploring, the world.
Yeah, but I don't have a publishing, company that's profitable. I don't have a bookstore. You owned and sold at some point an art gallery that you were like a proponent of artists.
That's right.
And you supported a lot of them.
Yes, no, and that was great. Actually.
As a patron, right? So so when did you get into that mindset of and MSO
right,
obviously?
So here we go. Okay, so I guess after Stanford. At the time I graduated at the top of my class, in my physics class at Stanford, and I was pretty sure I was going to go in and just go to graduate school, but I wanted to take a break, and I took some time off in LA, and I guess like everybody else in LA, I got really interested in film, and so I ended up going to film school and doing a master's in film at SC.
Okay, so that's when the Divergent.
And that was the beginning of it, yes. And then it's really interesting, they talk about the brain and how it changes and how we mature, and to a large extent I don't think we become like full adults until our late 20s. Like there's so much change that happens to us, supposedly you're an adult when you're 18 legally, although I guess in the States you can't drink till you're 21. Bullshit, by the way, but hey, though I don't drink, by the way, for the record. I don't drink alcohol.
You cut it all out?
Oh yeah. I've never been big on drinking, again, and no judgment. I always will have like beer and wine for guests, and that's all cool, but I just don't enjoy it. I'm pretty socially uninhibited in general, and I like taking care of my mind,
Yeah, so that's fair.
And alcohol definitely gradually destroys
everything.
The brain.
Yeah, and not just the brain. Everything.
That's right. I mean, basically, it's a little bit of poison that makes you feel good.
Yeah,
numbs you. But basically, going back to this idea of like, when do we become kind of fully formed? I do think that in our 20s we're still very lost, and I think it was in my late 20s that I was really kind of confused. I was going through a lot of different stuff. There was some weird family stuff at the time, and I just felt I needed like a change of scenery. And I came to London. First, I was going to be here just for a few months, and I ended up doing a second master's degree in London, and just falling in love with its culture.
What was the master's degree you did?
It's in interactive media, which also I'm very interested in.
Did the physics world ever kind of call you back, or did you ever feel the pull?
Well, first of all, let's be clear. I don't regret studying physics. That's a big part of who I am, and I think it's given me a lot of useful tools in how to like analyze and understand the world. So I love physics to this day. And I just saw Oppenheimer, by the way, great film. Physics gave me a really good foundation for the world. But even back then, when I was doing my bachelor's of physics, I went to school in the States, not in Europe. If I was in Europe, I would have done just physics pretty much. A liberal arts education in America allows you to study philosophy at the same time, and take classes in the humanities. So you're encouraged to open your mind, and I enjoyed that. So already I would say that during my undergraduate, I did a lot more than just physics. I had to do more than math and physics, and I enjoyed it, and that I think helped open up this thirst for also for the arts. I guess
that's a really good answer.
It's a little convoluted, but hey.
Well, you talk about transformative experiences, and obviously you had family dilemmas at the same time that you were graduating your undergrad sort of program at Stanford and leaving the physics department, going into film school.
Well, also when I came to London, that was also like a weird phase in my life. I just felt I needed to, shake things up. I think, to a large extent, obviously it's often pain is what wakes us up, right? Like, and so there is, pain can be useful in a way. Obviously, when there's really difficult things in life, that's a learning opportunity. It can be quite hard. And obviously also in the short term, just from games, by the way, you don't like losing. That's good pain because you can learn from that's, I think often, certainly when it comes to games, people like to kind of like shy away from the pain. But if you go into it, that's where you can learn the most, basically. It's from your losses that you learn the most.
What other kinds of experiences have you had that have had that kind of transformative impact on you? Just as an example, having a kid.
That's all very cheesy.
Is it? Have you changed?
I don't think I've changed that much.
All right, then we won't go into that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I love being a dad. Absolutely love it. And I love the playfulness of it. And
we'll go this direction then.
Yeah.
One of the hardest parts about being a parent is there's traumas I've been through that are really severe, right? That are extremely formative and led to some of my more positive characteristics and maybe helped mitigate some of my more obnoxious flaws. But you'd never want your kids to go through those traumas, and you would want them to avoid those traumas. But without those experiences, without those traumas, you probably wouldn't be the person you are, and maybe not as strong as you are. So that's always like a big complication when it comes to how we should raise our kids and what we should try to protect them from, or what we should try to expose them to, or not protect them from, or just be there and support them throughout their journey, and as much as we possibly can.
Absolutely. I mean, I think parenting, it's a conundrum, right? We want the best for our kids and we want to protect them. But yeah, it's, obviously, you want them to know how to deal with obstacles basically and setbacks. And, it was really interesting. I read a really good book recently. It's called Limitless Mind by Jo Boaler. It's a little bit on the drier side because she's a professor of education at Stanford that specializes in math education. And she talks a lot about how important it is to know how to also feel comfortable with struggling. And that also different cultures, it's quite interesting, will spend more time being stuck on a problem before giving up. And it's usually the kids that are willing to put in that extra time. Sometimes even when it could be an impossible problem, but if they're willing to put in that extra time, those are the ones that are going to do really well, basically.
Yeah. The way I see it is that there's three tiers of pleasure. There's a hedonistic pleasure, right? There's philanthropic pleasure, which I think is an important form of pleasure as well. And then there's the pleasure of struggle and striving.
Yes.
And I think that it's interesting. I never thought about it as in terms of there's different cultures have different sort of dedications to that form of pleasure. But that seems to be the one when you spend the most time on it, even though it's excruciatingly difficult, that is the most rewarding ultimately.
I believe so. A sort of marshmallow test, I guess, in a way. But yeah, I mean, I think struggle is really interesting. And that goes back to gameplay. A lot of philosophers have tried to define games. Wittgenstein, he failed miserably. But there's Bernard Suits. He came up with a really good definition. He said a game is the voluntary attempt to overcome unnecessary obstacles. And I think, because, whatever in golf, you could just easily pick up the ball and put it in the hole. But the fact that you use some sort of ridiculous metallic or wooden, instrument to try and get this ball into some little hole, that's what makes it interesting.
Do you like golf?
I do like golf, actually.
I'm trying so hard to like it. So many of my friends love it. And I walked into my buddy's house the other day and he was watching golf and I was like, what are you doing? He's like, watching golf. I was like, on purpose? What's just on the TV? The guys are swinging, they're walking around.
To be fair, every sport has its own thing. You have to kind of learn it, I guess. I'm about to go see my first proper cricket match in a few days here at Lord's, which will be interesting because I don't even know the rules of cricket yet. So.
Oh, my friend James, I saw him yesterday, loves cricket. And I went back to his house for a quick hello yesterday, and it was just on like it always is in his house. Sure. And he loves apparently there's a whole secondary sort of culture around the commentating. Yeah, and it's a really big deal here.
It is. Again, so I'll learn more about it. But the point is, all these games, they have their little microcultures and they're all kind of arbitrary in a way, right? But the point is, we enjoy seeing struggle, and I think it's very interesting. There is this kind of philosophical I guess, prophecy that Bernard Suits makes in one of his tracks, where he says that in the future, when technology, gives us some sort of utopian world, which may or may not happen, I don't know, we'll see. He says, what will people do? He says, well, they're going to play games. That's the only thing that will still be interesting, because and a game could be, it may not necessarily be always like, a game with points. They might build a house with their hands, which is a sort of game for them, basically, just because that will be interesting. Otherwise, you could just, ask the robotic wizards around you to give you this magnificent mansion. You'll have it in a second, right? So, we will seek struggle. We will seek to make things interesting. And in many ways, that's what you're seeing now with all these kind of like, these DIY crafts kind of movements, or I don't know, everybody baking sourdough, I mean, which is okay. That's cool. But that's, people want that shit, basically. Like that's part of human nature.
That's another thing that's interesting about you, is that you're super plugged into random trends in popular culture that I often am not. And it's great. It's awesome. But
I love, trying to understand the zeitgeist,
I think that's important. I just miss a few things.
That you catch. I think you're pretty switched on. But anyway,
I'm to certain things. Yeah. So you're right though, because everyone I know like you that has a lot of success, a lot of resources, is obsessed with games, and it's what they do for fun. And I can spend hours with those people, with you, playing games, and it's totally that artificial struggle that you're placing on yourself that is giving you some kind of meaning or fun. It's beautiful.
It is. And I think, in many ways, Bernard is right. I think that is the future. I mean, it's interesting. Again, I don't know how you define work to some extent, and there can be a sort of like fluid boundary between work and play as well. But, it seems that even in a futuristic society, again, where you might have everything you need, people still like to compete. They like to feel like they're in some sort of, silly hierarchy, which can be quite ridiculous. And they'll put a lot of effort into, being at the top of that hierarchy, and they'll play their games. And you could argue that that's what some, investment bankers on Wall Street do to some extent,
Highlight of my week is playing basketball with my friends right now, back home, other than being with my kids. For real though, I love being with my kids, but a lot of us go and play basketball once a week together, and we all agree this is one of the best things we have going for us right now. And, we're trying to design more game nights, and we're trying to get more involved. And I always think about what you've set up and how special that is. So that's awesome. I do want to talk about Judaism and maybe Israel, if you're up for it.
Of course.
So obviously you're Israeli. You spent the chunk of your adolescence in high school years there. You have a deep connection with Israel and Judaism. First, what does Judaism mean to you? And
first of all, I can't help being who I am, obviously. It's part of how I was raised. It's part of my culture. But I love the ability, as we talked about arguing, the ability to kind of explore and challenge the world, and the love for learning. This is a very Jewish thing. Mm-hmm. And we are the people of the book, right? Like we always had high literacy rates, right? And that's always been very important. I think, being able to argue, interpret. Mm-hmm. There's even, I think, there's a saying for every 3 Jews you get 4 opinions.
Right.
That's part of who we are, and obviously, like, I'm biased, but I appreciate that, and I like it, and certainly that's part of, I guess, why I've also done well at games, because often I think that is a very Jewish thing in a way. Being able to kind of take different sides and try and, understand them.
One thing I'll add to that, and I think it complements what you just said, is that I think Jews are really good at not accepting just authority.
That's right.
And I think that that's something that for me was a really big lesson. As a young kid, I remember a rabbi was teaching us about Adam and Eve, and he was just like, do you guys think this story is real? And it's like, yeah, you're teaching it to us. He's like, yeah, what if it's just made up? What if God's not real? And, that's Judaism in a nutshell. Like, you're allowed to challenge those things. You're allowed to challenge the rabbi. You're allowed to challenge the Torah.
I love it. Exactly.
You're allowed to challenge God. That's oftentimes why I think that Jews end up being such interesting thinkers, but also can be annoying to some people who just want things to make sense. And why people like Hitler can end up creating these anti-Semitic sort of movements.
Awful. Yeah. I mean, obviously, it's very sad. In fact, I was just in Thessaloniki, by the way, a few weeks ago, which was, it's the second biggest city in Greece after Athens. And it used to have a huge Jewish population. It was a third of the city was Jewish. And and Hitler basically wiped them all out. It was awful to see.
Was our family from the same place?
No, I'm not from this. Oh, I see. Is our family from the same? So my ancestry is Lithuanian from my mom's side.
Okay.
And then I should say most of like my family from Lithuania perished in the Holocaust.
Right.
But my grandparents managed to kind of get out just in time. And from my dad's side, they're German Swiss Jews that they came to the States at the late 19th century. So,
oh, wow.
So way before, basically. And they were cowboys in a sense. Well, not exactly, actually. My grandma was from Iowa, but then my grandfather was from New Mexico. And his family owned a chain of hardware stores. So they were merchants, basically, which is quite funny. There's even there's a place called Las Vegas, New Mexico, not Las Vegas, Nevada. And there's an Ilfeld Street there. And there's still some history. You could still,
Have you visited?
Pretty cool. No, but I'd like to go sometime.
I've been to Las Vegas.
You've been to Las Vegas, New Mexico?
Yeah.
That's cool. You've probably been on Ilfeld Street.
I was there 2 years ago. I wish I had known.
Oh, shit. That's so cool.
I would have taken a picture for you.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know. I'd love to go. There's also an Ilfeld village in Germany, which is where the name, my last name comes from, which is very small, that I'd be curious to visit as well. But
it's interesting because the Lithuanian Jewish culture is very different from the German Swiss Jewish culture.
Yeah.
And oftentimes German type Jews would look down on the Eastern European Jewry. And those marriages weren't as common when your grandparents were getting together. So I bet you that was part of their story.
Oh, no. So my I should be clear. My grandparents in the States were both, it was German and Swiss. They were just German Swiss. The Lithuanians, they married amongst each other and they moved to Israel, Oh,
I understand.
So, yeah.
So different sides.
Different sides. That's right.
Got it. Yeah. Cause there's a huge cultural divide there, actually. Especially at that time.
Yeah. It's weird. It's weird and interesting. I mean,
like your Lithuanian family is more like my Polish Jewish family.
I believe so. Yeah.
There's a huge overlap there.
I've got a great story if you want a Polish chess story, if you want to hear.
I want to hear it.
Here, it's quite cool. Because I'm always curious to like learn and, more about what makes people extraordinary, And this was a really weird story that I learned recently. So Poland, obviously, Polish Jews got pretty much, wiped out, which was awful. But in September of 1939, the Chess Olympiad, which would take place every 4 years, happened to take place in Buenos Aires, in Argentina. And a lot of the best chess players in Europe, including Poland's best chess players, were actually in Argentina at the time. So they were lucky. It was a sort of Noah's Ark of like Jewish chess players. They all went on one ship, basically, from Europe to Buenos Aires. And it was quite interesting because the Polish team was very strong. And in fact, I think it took second overall. And they refused to play the Germans at the time because they'd just been invaded. And Germany, I think won or something, or something like that. Germany was quite strong or took second as well. But anyway, Michael Najdorf, who is a Polish Jewish grandmaster, he ended up staying, like a lot of Jews, in Argentina. Because you're not going to go back to the Holocaust, basically, and his wife and daughter were, they remained in Poland, and he didn't know how to get in touch with them. He didn't know how they could find him, so he decided he would just try and do things that were newsworthy. And so he set the world for playing the most blindfold chess games at the same time, and he played at the time, I think it was like 45 games all at the same time, blindfold, so that he's remembering all the positions in his mind and communicating the moves, and he won most of the games, and he did several of these exhibitions, setting the world record at the time. I mean, the sad part was that his wife and daughter did perish, unfortunately, so they didn't find it, which was awful. But in trying to find them, he ended up going to this extreme and doing something that was just unimaginable. And I think it took another like 50 years until someone was able to match his record. And Michael became Miguel. He became Miguel Najdorf. There's an actual chess Sicilian opening called the Najdorf that's named after him.
That's a really beautiful story. Is that a story that inspired you to do underwater chess and create that game? You created underwater chess, right?
I did, but that was before I knew about this story, which is more recent.
Were you trying to find people by creating news?
So underwater chess, also known as diving chess, which you can look it up on YouTube, is a sort of amusing attempt at making chess into a sport. and the idea was to make it physical. And basically, it's just normal chess, but played underwater. And you can basically think for as long as you can hold your breath for each move. So you're usually above, well, half the time you're above the surface, and the other half you're thinking about your move and making a move. So the concept is very simple, and it's kind of taken off as a sort of fun thing. Now Poland has its own national championship, Holland does as well, and we've got the world championship here in England. So
are you not the best at this game that you created?
I wasn't at first, but since then there've been stronger players have come, and I also haven't dedicated that much time to trying to stay on top, but I'm very happy to see
you're not crushing the backgammon world instead.
Well, I wouldn't quite say that, but I'm enjoying backgammon. But
do you talk trash in between games?
Nah, I'm too nice a guy. I'll do it in blitz and chess with friends. That's cool, but maybe I don't know. Maybe with friends I would learn to do that. But it's funny. I have played in Washington Square in New York, and trash talking is part of it. That's cool. But being new to a game like backgammon, I always try and be as gracious as possible. I've even said, it's funny, like in several of the matches that I won, I would literally apologize sometimes for rolling like, a joker, which is like, rolling something that just like basically wins the position. And I would just say sorry, which people were surprised. They're like, what? You don't need to apologize for rolling a winning number. For me, it's like, I'm sorry. Like,
Because you're not as used to games of chance.
That's right. Well, that's not totally true.
You play poker. You've done those kinds of things.
But Catan, for example, I love Catan. There's some chance there.
Sure, but it's not like backgammon. Like backgammon you're literally rolling dice.
Yes, but you are literally rolling dice in Catan as well.
It's true. So there's something. Yeah, I guess you're okay. But
and you're covering. It's like craps. You're playing craps basically. It's craps meets Monopoly. And
do you play craps?
I don't like craps, but I know that the best thing you can do is fully back up the pass line, because that's where you get true odds. That's the only time the casino doesn't have an advantage over you. So, but I don't. I don't like games where there's no real skill and the casino's got a huge edge. That's just stupid, right? So, but I would say that Catan is not that different from backgammon, actually.
Is there any single moment or game that you've won that meant the most to you, that sticks in your mind? That's like this game.
Jesus, wow. That's a good question. I would need to think about that and get back to you. I've had so many gaming moments,
stuck, like the win stuck with you, or the moment, or what the significance of it.
That's a great question. Because at the time, everything seems so important at the time, right? It's so exciting. It's such a big deal. I remember when I was in elementary school, I was living in Memphis, Tennessee. Kind of random, and I just came back from the nationals, and I took third in the U.S. In the elementary school division, and I remember I got to go on some like morning talk show, local morning talk show, and be interviewed about it, and I remember that was so exciting, I didn't even know what kind of like how to process all of that. That was very exciting at the time. Since then you realize that everything's very exciting, but everything's very ephemeral. Nobody's going to really give a shit about who won a tournament, in some place, even if it's a world championship another 100 years from now.
I really do have this theory that a lot of the enjoyment that we get from things later in life are tied back to those childhood moments, like the first time playing with your dad, beating his friends, being on TV. Sure. Getting that kind of those kinds of accolades, like you, I think on some subconscious level, when we're really enjoying stuff later on in life, we're remembering those things.
100%. And I have a video of that somewhere. By the way, I had a Southern drawl, which is pretty silly.
You had a drawl?
Yeah.
I thought you were born in.
No. But when you live in Memphis,
for how many years were you there?
4 years.
And you hit a proper drawl.
Tiny.
That's so adorable. And then you became Israeli, and now you talk like this.
I've always gone to a high pitch when I get excited.
That's the best. But did you do it with a drawl? I've never heard the Israeli mixed with a drawl.
No, I don't think it was that. I don't know. Well, I'll find it for you. But basically, it's interesting, about my identity. You're asking about that. I've always viewed myself as, Israeli American, and I love both cultures. And I've always, when I lived in Israel, I always felt something was, my American side was kind of like wasn't getting enough action, and vice versa in the States. In England, I've always felt like I know that I don't belong, but I feel comfortable with it. I'm just like, I don't expect to be a local. And And I enjoy being the American in England, even though I'm also half Israeli. They don't hear that. They hear my American accent. It also has fluctuated a bit over the years. Some people think I'm Canadian now. It's quite funny.
I'm sorry about that. Yeah.
It's all right. I enjoy being North American here. Let's just say that. And, but you know, I'm very, very much, you know, we talk about being Israeli. I'm all about challenging things and, you know, and doing things, you know, trying to build things. And, you know, I love the Israeli approach to things, and also being direct, you know, like, you know, if someone's got, I don't know, something stuck in their teeth, you know, and you're
clear your teeth out. Yeah.
You know, I will tell them, you know, and that might look a little strange to like the Brits who might try and find a way to insinuate that they might want to take a look in the mirror.
Right.
But,
or if someone cuts in front of you in line and if it's unwitting, an Israeli will just be like, I'm here, move. An English person might let the person cut.
Yeah, so they also don't cut so much, I would say here. New Yorkers might be more aggressive, but Brits, they seem to enjoy standing in line. It's a national sport of sorts.
I love that. And this is London is your home forever. You have this split identity between American and Israeli, but you chose London. You're here, and this is it. This is where you're planting your flag.
Forever
right?
is you know, never say never, right? First of all, or forever. You know, I love London. I'm proud to be a British citizen as well. You know, I think it's a very humane culture and also a pretty stable one. You know, I mean, we can get in a lot of politics. I like that there's universal health care, for example. I think that's very important. But anyway, some people may not like me saying that.
I just think that's more of a nuanced conversation. I think the idea of universal healthcare is awesome.
Fine.
I can get behind the idea.
Which, by the way, I'm used to in Israel as well. You know, in Israel, did we talk about this? In Israel, there's like kind of like three or four different HMOs that are all subsidized by the government, and they compete, and you can choose to switch between them. So it's which is quite cool. So it's like it is universal healthcare, but with competition, which is quite interesting.
I was on a train up from Bournemouth today, and there's special procedure, and there's a woman telling me that there are certain procedures that just doesn't work well within the NHS, and
no system is perfect,
and they have to fly out like stuff like obviously IVF. There's certain kinds of like pain procedures that the NHS is it's hard to get on their list. It's hard to get scheduled. It's hard. And so people end up flying to the Czech Republic, actually. Apparently, I learned this on the train. I have to look this up. Maybe I'll cut this out if it's not real.
You should check that.
I'll fact check this.
Check it. I'm saying Czech Republic. Anyway, I'm being silly.
For IVF treatment, I don't think this woman was making it up. But like, anyways.
No, I'm not saying. I was just using the wordplay.
Check the Czech Republic.
Yes,
sorry.
I don't know.
Good pun.
Yeah. So back, you're asking about forever. So I don't know forever if it's forever. There you go. High pitched again, getting excited. But
I love that about you. I'm sorry that I tease you about it. It's
no. It's cool. It's part of who I am. I don't know. I mean, I enjoy being in London. It's you know, it's got a good kind of vantage point on the world. I think it's connected to most of the world, and it's very cosmopolitan. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, I like London, but you know, I also like visiting Israel. I go to Israel a lot. I visit the U.S. A decent amount as well, but when I go to Israel more often, it's only a 5-hour flight. 4.5 even. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think, you know, we're in a really weird stage in history. I think there's obviously a lot going on in the world. I think countries are going to be changing dramatically in the next few decades, I think. I mean, that's a whole other conversation, but I think with AI emerging, you know, the world's going to look very, very different than it does today.
And I don't even want to pretend to guess that I know what it'll be.
Me neither.
So many unknowns. And right now, we were talking about this a bit earlier off camera, but the world's in a pretty. It seems like it's not in the healthiest of states. I hope that maybe this new technology with these unknown unknowns helps us get to a better place. I would like to try to be optimistic about it.
May or may not, and obviously technologies can be used maliciously as well, right? Right. So it's very complicated.
That kind of leads in actually. What's your because like you've been really thoughtful about what your life's. You're always thoughtful about what you're doing and why you want to be doing it, and you're about to embark. You've always been an investor and you've always worked on businesses, and I think right now you're starting to embark more officially down that track. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that is and what you're working on?
Sure. So obviously, you know, I've been a serial entrepreneur and also I've done a lot of angel investing. We haven't talked about that, but a lot of investing over the years. And
any companies you want to flag as like just super exciting companies you invested in while you were
in the past? I invested in Coursera, which you know, I'm very proud to do that. I've always wanted to invest in things that have a positive impact on the world. Like that's really important to me. and also build things. Like I'm building Play Strategy, which is a games platform that uses AI to teach people things.
That's right.
Again, that's exactly my, who I am, I guess. But I've just joined a VC firm called Remagine that Fund 2 focuses on games and artificial intelligence. And, those are things I'm very interested in. I'm going to be taking, and I've already started taking a deep dive into AI because, I think things are changing really quickly. And I think, everything we take for granted in a way is going to be kind of up for grabs, even morality itself. So I think
Can you go into what you mean by that?
Well, I think, a lot of people are afraid about like how AI will act and, how it can, how it will, interpret ethical situations. I think AIs will look at the world in a very different way than we do. And in many ways, I think our point of view can be quite limited, quite biased, and, they'll create their own ethics and they might even be more profound than ours, actually.
Do you think that we're even remotely close to that moment in time when AI is going to be creating their own series of ethics that isn't just plagiarism? Because right now, what I've seen is really, really impressive plagiarism.
Sure.
It's like a composite thing. It's like a Frankenstein monster of like other things, right?
That's right. Well, I think you need another 10 to 15 years.
Okay.
That's not that far away.
No, that's interesting. So that you think that they can because they'll be able to do this at a higher level than us, that they may be able to approach morality and ethics.
Hells yeah.
In a way that changes the way that we all live.
Absolutely. And let's be clear, humans, we're pretty cool and interesting creatures, but I mean, look how violent we are. Look at all the violence in the world. Look at all the nasty shit we do. Like we certainly have a lot to learn.
Everything's relative. Like you're one of the smartest people I know, and obviously relative, but we're still apes. And I think that you can imagine. Like if we saw a gorilla that was doing math, we think that gorilla is so smart, even if it was just doing really fundamental math, right?
Yeah.
And it's basically like our smartest humans we think they're super smart because they do the things that people like you do, but compared to what? Other people.
That's right.
And so you're right. We might be approaching something that's kind of, I mean, if you're right, that could be really positive, or alternatively, Etan, if they start creating their own morality and ethics, that could be terrifying.
Well, I don't know. Now we're projecting, right? This is, again, when you say terrifying, we're often projecting ourselves onto them, thinking, in our own way. So I don't, I think you have to be very careful with that. But I think, it's interesting. I think
they'll get rid of Pornhub for sure, right?
Of what? Wait, sorry. What is Pornhub? What was the first part? The prefix in that word. What is that? What does that mean?
Yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt. What you were saying. Right. So not necessarily.
You hear stories about in China where they already have some sort of social credit system, right? Where I guess you can, if you behave badly, I guess, I don't know, things will become more difficult for you, basically, right?
Yeah, that sounds terrible.
It sounds terrible, 100%. No, I'm not
I don't want the AI overlords doing that to us.
No, but what I think could happen in these weird situations, certainly in China, is when you start to have AIs automating things like that, I wouldn't be surprised if people start to become superstitious about these AIs and start kind of guessing how they will act and hoping that if they do a certain thing, maybe they'll benefit in some way. I think there'll be new gods in a way. I think that is possible, but...
Well, it's not just possible, it's probable, because people are really in need of gods right now.
Yes, I think that's right. I think this goes back to, we've kind of exhausted a lot of our ideologies, right? In many ways. And so, I think that's true. We're often looking for things. And unfortunately, sometimes it takes people down some really nasty paths, right? Because there isn't anything really enlightening enough, I guess, out there. So I think, but I think things will change. And look, I'm an optimist at heart, and one of the reasons, I'm interested in these things. I want to see how we can use these new technologies for good, and I believe in the human potential, basically.
That's actually a really interesting point that you made about exhausting ideologies and where we are right now. Can you go a little bit deeper into what that means?
I guess oversimplified kind of comparisons between, I don't know, communism and, I don't know, neoliberalism or whatever. Everybody now more or less, agrees that obviously the communism is bad.
Not everyone.
Not everyone, but most people. But similarly, nobody, there's this notion about democracy being like, the best of like, a bad bunch, basically, like, the lesser evil, right? But, that's not necessarily great either.
Feels like we're often being ruled by a lot of elitist oligarchs in these societies that are democracies that just figured out how to game the populace in the voting.
That's right. I mean, certainly, the electoral college system in the States is kind of a strange thing as well.
It's interesting.
By the way, we don't have to get into that. But, I think there's a lot of different kind of like, I guess, well, obviously, let's back up from game theory for a sec. But I think, the idea that there could be a correct way of looking at the world and a correct way of acting, it was very seductive.
It's extremely seductive.
But I think most of these approaches haven't really given us a definitive answer. And most people would agree that in the end, all these systems seem to become corrupt in one way or another.
I think that's actually something that Judaism does quite well. And it's not to say that non-Jews can't get there, but this is, I think that's more likely a Jew can get to a place where they're comfortable being uncomfortable and not having,
yes, absolutely.
And not having like a framework that's absolutely correct, concrete 100% of the time.
That's right. Unless you're perhaps like too much of a zealot, right?
Of course, dude, come on, of course.
But yeah. I think that's right. I think that people have always been searching, and in times of change, and I guess if you look at history, obviously change was very slow. Like, right, I know 2,000 years ago, technological innovation was very slow. Political structures were slow to change. Like, things have accelerated. They keep accelerating. And in many ways, I think. It's great, but I think it was Nietzsche also who was saying, that God is dead. He didn't mean it necessarily like literally. It was more the idea that, man himself has thrown away like our tradition and we're lost in many ways, right? Like, and I think, that acceleration just seems to be speeding up all the time, right? Like this is our condition at the moment. And I would go back again to this idea, again, I mentioned games, but I think anything that allows you to reflect and also I think Judaism is very good at also like taking a moment, challenging things, not taking things as kind of as truth with a capital T. I think that's very important. And we need it now more than ever.
Do you think that this sort of vacuum of cultural purpose is sometimes what drives you to promote culture the way you do? Do you think that's connected at all? Or do you think that's not something is that something you never thought about intentionally?
I think that's giving me way too much credit.
You're just really into things and you like it. They're exciting.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think I enjoy being part of the world. Some people, I guess, could enjoy also living in their own isolated bubble. For me, it's very important to feel like I'm part of it. I'm interacting with it and also contributing to it. That's a big part of who I am. If I don't contribute, then I feel like I'm not really kind of living my life to its fullest. But then again, that's just how I'm wired. There's a price for that as well. I'm constantly doing things, and pushing myself. And I'll share that I have a therapist that I meet with every fortnight, and she's amazing, and she always tells me, she says, there's I like what she said. There's human beings and there's human doers. And I'm a human doer, always doing. And she's always encouraging me to like, just chillax a little more, go do some nothingness, whatever it is, get a massage or I don't know, go chill somewhere. And I think that's very important, but for whatever reason, I seem to always, I need to actually put effort into being, I guess, lazy, perhaps is the term, but to me, that actually takes effort.
Do you have any books that you're publishing that you think I should read? I should go buy.
Oh, there's so many amazing books. I love publishing. I love sharing wisdom. That's why.
No, but which book should I check out? We've
got a book coming out. So I out of the 100 or so books that we publish a year, I personally commission about half a dozen, and about like half of those are from books that I read in Hebrew and that I really like, and then I get the English rights, and then we publish them globally in English. I just read an amazing book about love by a biologist at the Weizmann Institute called Liat Yakir, and that book by Liat Yakir, I think the working title at the moment, I think is might be like a short history of love or something like that. A brief history of love. I think it's a brief history of love, but that's going to come out on Valentine's Day And I'm very excited about that.
Is it weird translating books from Hebrew to English? Like, is that effective? Do you have a translator that works well for you guys?
Oh yeah, I mean that's a whole other conversation. But no, I mean it's easy to do. It
seems like it'd be a difficult thing to match.
Obviously, there's the simple first step, and then you want to make sure you get the nuances, and then you also want to change some of the cultural references because some of them may be referring to things that Israelis would understand, or might be a bit more Jewish, let's say, and then you want to create, I guess, a more kind of anglicized version that would be relevant for people to enjoy in the rest of the world. So yeah, you have to go through all these processes, but that's a very clear-cut kind of editing and translational process. I love Chaim Shapira is a really great mathematician and author and speaker in Israel, and I've read some of his books, and I approached him a few years ago, and we've been publishing all of his books in English, basically, and I think he's amazing. I recommend, we've got a great book on games and strategy in life, and it's called Gladiators, Pirates, and Games of Trust. So I think that's a really fun book. Again, there's so many great books.
Awesome.
But Chaim Shapira is awesome. We've got an amazing book on probability coming out with him, and he's got a great book on life as well. It's called I think it's called Happiness and Other Small Things of Absolute Importance. Because that's actually interesting as well. How, what do you do to be happy, to live a meaningful life? Like, I think he's a really interesting philosopher, and he's a bit like Alain de Botton. He takes a lot of popular kind of cultural things like Alice in Wonderland and Winnie the Pooh, and then finds wisdom in that, and gives you kind of practical tips on how to, I guess, enjoy life and make the most of it. He says, by the way, this is a really interesting thing he said recently, which I really appreciate. He says that knowing a little about something is very dangerous, actually, because then you think you understand it, and then you become cocky and have an opinion, which is very dangerous.
What's that called when you think you're an expert in something because you can't? The Dunning-Kruger effect.
Okay, but I thought that was very profound, and I think it plays a lot into politics, unfortunately. But he's a brilliant thinker and a brilliant guy. There's so many.
It's basically just that. It's like what you were saying. If you learn the rules of basketball, you all of a sudden think you understand just the entire game, and you won't know the different nuances and how the different plays work, and the moves and the dribbling and the defenses or whatever. But because you just think, ball and hoop, 3-pointer, free throw, got it. And that's basically like how people apply themselves in life. And the more you learn about anything, the more you realize that there's just really experts have so much more to learn as well.
Oh yeah, for sure. And the unique thing about it is the more you learn about something, well, in games, one of the things that makes them, that's very interesting is if you're trying to get better at something, you find that once you get really good at it, that's when you plateau, right? That's really, it's usually the things that you're very good at that also frustrate you the most because it's harder to improve, right? So
have you plateaued in Backgammon?
Definitely not.
Okay. You're going to win next year?
But I don't know how much more energy I'm going to put into Backgammon. I'll keep going for now. I was able to play, so my best match at the World Championships, I played there's a PR, that's like an AI kind of output that tells you how well you play. I played a match at a 4.08 level, that's like a grandmaster level. That was one match. But on average, I was kind of fluctuating at like around a 6, which is that's like a master level. So I was playing at a master level, but not a grandmaster level. And there's so much for me still to learn and improve upon. Will I choose to do it or not? I'm still figuring it out. It's the world is very rich. I have to decide, where I want to.
A lot of shiny objects for you.
Well, I guess that's one way to look at it.
Your curiosity is healthy, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, for backgammon and all those things, I enjoy things that will exercise my brain. It's been so cool to kind of also learn, improve, and it's been great for the mind.
Well, what other things have you been considering trying to become an expert at that you aren't currently an expert at?
Well, I'm not sure yet. AI, as I said, is something I'm very interested in at the moment. So we'll see. But backgammon, that's been an amazing process for the last 6 months. And yeah, no, it culminated in an unbelievable tournament last week. By the way, another great book I'll plug. Sorry, why not? We recently published a great book on how to create a successful startup.
Oh, cool. Who wrote it?
Uri Levine wrote it. He was one of the founders of Waze. Yeah, he's already created 2 unicorns. He's a brilliant entrepreneur. And I think he gives a really great approach. The book is called Fall in Love with the Problem, Not the Solution. And I think that is so true. You have to really fall in love with a problem that you want to solve that has an emotional pain point. And he gives so much insight on how to build. And I'm so proud to publish that book. At one point it was funny, like the way Waze worked was, they didn't have maps. So they would actually have, sometimes people would need to drive around to create the maps.
That's so cool.
It was crowdsourced, really, most of it, actually. That's how it worked. So they actually, at some point, they gamified it. They tried to encourage people to drive around so that your car would turn into Pac-Man. And they would have like little like things in the road where you would start like gobbling up and winning like virtual points. So people would be encouraged to kind of drive around streets and roads. And they didn't even know what a one-way street was, but basically based on the direction of traffic, they could figure it out. That's how Waze was created. Like
I didn't know that. That's so amazing.
It was so ingenious, and it's like typical Israeli kind of, I think, like ingenuity, basically.
Yeah, that's amazing. So what's the book called again?
It's called Fall in Love with the Problem, Not the Solution.
And it's out?
It's out. It came out earlier this year, and I've also interviewed him for my podcast. I've got a little podcast as well.
Oh yeah,
which is quite fun, and. It's called the Etan Ilfeld podcast. And if you just want to listen to that interview, it's a pretty solid interview, I think.
Have you picked up an instrument yet? Are you playing music yet?
Oh, Jesus. During COVID, I practiced the ukulele a bit, but it was, I played quite poorly, I have to say.
Okay. Well,
that's something maybe I do need to put more energy into. I heard, it's interesting. I heard that anyone, or most people can develop perfect pitch. I don't know if that's true or not. I certainly am far from it.
I don't think anybody can.
But most people, apparently, like if you train yourself, I don't know.
Some people I know are just,
Well, I'm one of those supposedly.
Deaf.
I think I'm not. I've got good rhythm, but I think I'm pretty tone deaf. But
I've heard you sing. I remember at your wedding you had a you have like a very like deep Hebrew when you did like Hebrew prayers. Remember?
I see. Yeah, I can do that. Sure.
Yeah.
But anyway, the point is, I suck at music. I do love it though. Although I did. Did you know? I made a song though. Do you know about this or no? Okay. Oh, this is a cute little story, but like, it's funny. So Chloe, my daughter and I, like, we would sometimes like make up songs, during bath time, right? And we came up with a song naturally called Chloe the Unicorn, obviously. And it was I think it was a pretty catchy tune. And I gave it to a friend of mine, Daisy Shute, who's a singer and songwriter. And she made it into like a proper song, basically. We took the lyrics and the melody, and then she put it on Spotify. So Chloe and I both have songwriting credits on Spotify, which is cool. So you can go listen to Chloe the Unicorn. And the funny thing was, Chloe used to be so proud of that song. She used to ask like all these like, smart speakers to play it. But now I think she's starting to become too cool.
At the age of 6?
Yes. When she was 3, she loved it. At 6, she's no longer proud of that song. It's quite funny how things change so freaking quickly, She was so proud. It was like, tell everybody about the song. Now she's embarrassed when I mention it.
I'm going to have 2 daughters, and I'm terrified of the teenage years. I'm terrified. If it starts at 6, like imagine what they're going to be like at 15.
Sure. No, she's still a sweetheart. She just obviously has had a change of heart on something that she used to, appreciate. But teenage years, I think, obviously they sound quite challenging.
Just still play for her every day in the mornings.
That's sort of the alarm, right? The wake up now. I don't know. I mean, look, I think as parents, all we can do is, kind of give our kids like the best tools possible. And at the end of the day, it's going to be their life, right?
Yeah. Well, Etan, again, I really appreciate you, man. I always love hanging out with you anyways. To do it on camera. Thanks for letting us come over and set this up and do this at your place.
Thank you for coming.